Thank you, Kamm, for sitting down with us today. We look forward to this dialogue. But before we jump into this, can you kind of tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Kamm Howard, born and raised in Chicago. I went to public schools in Chicago, graduated from Dunbar High School. Years later, went to Roosevelt University, got a bachelor's degree in political science and community renewal. Later got a master's degree in real estate. So my profession is a real estate investor. My day-to-day job is a black redemptionist in the field of reparations, in the reparations movement. So I'm not getting paid by that, but that's where most of my time is spent.
Well, you're not getting paid financially, but the reward, I know, is definitely
it's major, yeah.
So, you shared a little bit about your background and, just seeing the education trajectory that you're on. How did you end up being involved particularly in the reparations movement?
Well, in between graduating from high school, doing a few things, and going to get my college degree, I also spent a little time in prison. And it was there where I came in contact with political prisoners and the whole notion of what it meant to live as a colonized person in America. And it was through that political awakening that I saw that there are a myriad number of issues that face people of African descent in this country. And all of it has its roots in the what we call crimes committed against our ancestors, crimes of enslavement, crimes of Jim Crow segregation, the ongoing crimes of police terror and police violence and mass incarceration, and that all of these issues that we face have this one so-called origin, and that if we attack that origin, then we can begin to address all the issues. And so attacking the criminal element within this society that injured us, the American government, corporations, institutions, etc., for resources, then we can target those resources for the repair of our people. So I thought it was like, instead of working in, criminal justice, or instead of working in health, or instead of working somewhere, in some other of these issues, many issues that we face, that this one issue encompassed all of them. If we can get this one right, we can then have resources to address everything that's facing us.
Wow, powerful.
Yeah.
So for those which unfortunately, we talked before about just how over time, with generations, even the knowledge of where people of African descent, or I don't even know if we would use it as black people in this country, that there's this void of knowledge on even how we got here.
Sure.
But in addition to that, is even when the term reparations is used now without having that context, it can be a little illogical and not really make sense to people. So can you tell us a little bit, what is reparations?
Sure. Reparations as NCOBRA. In fact, I'm a member of NCOBRA. NCOBRA is the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America. We've been in existence about 30 years. I came in about 10 or 11 years ago. I'm now the national co-chair, male co-chair of NCOBRA. But NCOBRA defines reparations as the process of repairing, healing, and restoring people who were injured due to their group identity and violation of their fundamental human rights by a government, corporation, institution, or individual. Now, I know I said a lot in that, but the main focus is it's a process. It's not just a thing. It's a process of getting to wholeness, a process of getting repaired. We talk about the injury a lot in the reparations movement. The injury that exists in broken families, and exists in poor mental health, poor physical health, lack of education, etc. These are legacies of those crimes that are committed against us. And so how do we repair these injuries? That's what the reparations movement is about. How do we educate our people towards self-determination, as opposed to trying to fit into a job where they're going to be underpaid? Even if they get a job, they're going to be underpaid. They're going to get paid for what they're worth. But how do we educate them to a point where they're utilizing their skills and talents to benefit the collective, to empower the collective, to determine where we want to go as a people. And so that's a true education, as opposed to education for employment. So all these things are really what the reparations movement is designed for.
It's interesting that you talked on or went to education. That's particularly my focus and my passion. And, you know, just as you think on reparations, that the condition that we're in, our people in, there's a problem with how we're thinking.
Sure.
And that, of course, we know when we get into colonizing, that process really, and even our enslavement, the biggest component was not really the control of the body, but really the control of the mind, and how that component of education is definitely needed to address that.
Yeah.
So what are some of the other aspects that you look at? You know, we talked a little bit about before, and there's been discussions that different people have different perspectives. We, even within our community, about what reparations would look like.
Right.
From, you know, everybody should get a check,
right.
You know, and then it will be done, or whatever it is. So from your perspective, can you kind of speak into what some of those other things in the optimum situation would be that we would receive that would allow us to truly be repaired?
Sure. What Americans, black, white, and other Americans don't understand is there's a whole international canon of law, resources around reparations, understanding around reparations that has not made it to America, and particularly within the United Nations. So internationally, there are 5 components that any reparations demand should produce the outcomes of. The first component is cessation and guarantees of non-repetition. That means that whoever's doing the harms must stop the harms. That's the first component of reparations. You must stop the ongoing harms. The ongoing harms of police violence, they must be stopped. The ongoing crimes of all these different laws within the American government that discriminate against black people have a disproportionate effect on black people. They might not say they're for blacks, but they have a disproportionate effect on black people. We need to find out all those laws, and they must be halted, and there must be guarantees put in place to keep those from reoccurring. That's the first component of reparations under international law, cessation and guarantees of non-repetition. The second component is restitution. How do you return the people back to a way they would have been had they not been injured in the first place? When the Black Panther came out, you heard a lot of talk about that's how Africa would look if they had never been colonized, right? So how do we get back to a state that we would have been had we not been injured, had we not been stolen from the continent, had we not been miseducated, had we not been psychologically damaged? It's going to take a whole lot to get us back there, and that's where the institutional type of reparations comes in, where you fund major institutions. Like you might fund historically black colleges. That might be a part of the reparations package. You create different economic development type of issues for reparations. You create funds from which black businesses or other people who want to go into business can expand their or go into business or expand their business. So the restitution component, health issues, health initiatives. How do we get, all of this juvenile diabetes under control? Because of, this was something that never was part of our community. So those type of things that are geared toward a systematic structural repair are necessary. So that's restitution. The third component is compensation. Now, a lot of people want to begin the conversation with compensation. Let's give them a check. But, we understand that that's not going to get us to repair and wholeness. It is part of reparations, but it's not the main part that's going to get us to the repair. The main part is some of the other aspects, the cessation, the restitution primarily, and then I'll go into a couple of the other ones. But a check or compensation is part of reparations. Should black people get a check? I think all black people should get a check. 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, $50,000. I think, our ancestors were worked for lifetimes, over generations. So yeah, there should be a check. There should be some kind of compensation. But compensation does not have to just come in a check. It can also come in the form of tax relief. It can come in the form of business grants. It can come in the form of educational grants. Anything that helps black people build wealth is compensation. So it doesn't have to just come in a check. The fourth component of reparations under international norms is satisfaction. How do you return the dignity back to people whose dignity was destroyed through your criminal acts? For instance, I was in China a couple of years ago, and I was living in the hood, in the working class community in China. I spent 22 days there. And some mornings I would go out, and as I'm walking down the street, old Chinese women will walk on the other side of the sidewalk when I pass by. Now, it's not like I'm 21, 22 years old. You know, I'm 56 years old, man. What threat am I to an old Chinese woman? You know what I'm saying? So this is the lack of dignity that African people can enjoy anywhere on the planet as a result of these crimes committed against our ancestors. So how do we get our dignity back? Under international law, certain things like monuments, like museums, like apologies, real apologies, are ways in which you can attempt to restore the dignity of a people. So these things have to be put in place. Last week there was a grand opening of a museum in Montgomery, Alabama that dealt with the lynching. And it's a powerful testament to the struggles our ancestors, not only the crimes that were committed, but the struggles against those crimes, what we did in response to the lynchings. And so those type of things help us, regain our dignity. And the fifth component of reparations is rehabilitation. How do we deal with the psychological damage that has been, what type of re-education, what type of therapy, what type of holistic type of aspects that we need to get our minds back, to reclaim our minds to the point where we can envision a prosperous future for us, one that is totally devoted to African people and not concerned about anybody else, but one that's devoted to our upliftment, which we used to have at one time, and so we need to get back to that. So reparations is a whole lot. We don't see it as just one thing. We see it as something visionary, revolutionary, radical. African people being African, people of African descent being, organized for their own best interests.
Thank you. We're going to close out on that point, but of course there's more to come, and we look forward to the next segment. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
They know the woman is God, that's why they want to control it. So I thought we waking them up. They don't really know it's up. So I thought we waking them up. Time to wake up. If they sleeping on us, I swear we waking them up. The knowledge and the food, so I'm taking a lunch. Why I gotta think about leaving the house without a gun? Cause this world getting crazy, I'm thinking I'm on a run. Always see me looking right to left. They keep us at the bottom, cause my people high in debt. Now they don't want to